Hi, I'm Dilly Brigs with the Subject Press, and today I am getting to speak to the owners of Face Value Comics, Mr. Dave Knott and Sky Owens. How are you guys doing today?
Doing well, Dilly. Thanks for asking.
Yes, thanks for having us.
Oh, I was very excited to be able to talk to you guys. Just to give everybody a little bit of an idea, to let the people out there know, Face Value Comics is a site where you can look up and find comic book characters, superhero characters, that also touch on having autism, and they use their autism to help save people, and they use it for their ability advantage. Now, is that correct? Is that kind of the right description of your site with your characters?
Yes, we chose to give kids a hero like themselves. As a mainstream comic books, we have to legally avoid using the term superhero. DC and Marvel Comics have shared copyright on that word. But we also saw that there is no featured comic book hero who has autism. And we wanted to fill that gap. Both Sky and myself love comic books, love the stories from way back in the day and even contemporary comic books today. But even still, autism is a subject that is not touched upon by mainstream creators. So this gives us the chance as an independent self-publishing company to do that.
Yes, that's one thing that made me stop when I came across your site, because that is not something that the general public gets to see, nor the community and the autism community do we see much of any characters out there really with beyond the spectrum. You know, we don't really have a whole lot that we can look up to in that generalized area. And that's why I really wanted to speak with you. I thought this was a fascinating idea. I mean, how did you guys come up with the concept of this? How did you find and realize that no one is making these types of characters out there?
Well, we began by looking and reading comic books. I think it's difficult for anyone to write comic books without a good understanding of the genre. First and foremost, it's sequentially driven art that tells a story. With my experience in postgraduate research on facial feature recognition, I decided to use that in my professional field as a therapist. Aside from my own family's compassion and patience, the use of facial feature recognition to help accurately predict another's emotional situation or their emotional expression, I think that's my number one coping skill as an adult on the spectrum myself. So weaving those into our stories, we wanted to give kids not just a comic book hero, we wanted to give them a featured comic book hero to shine the light on them, doing heroic deeds, almost in a callback to the knights of old of chivalry, goodness, kindness, and fighting villains who were against those expressions of identity. Weaving that facial feature recognition, we also added color codes to our heroes and villains to make them easily identifiable. For example, our hero is in blue. Yeah, sure. Our hero, and most of our heroes, are in the cool shades of the color spectrum, the greens and the blues and such, while our main bad guys tend to have more of the warm colors, like a red or an orange. And that's one way to help distinguish. In addition to their actions and any speeches they may give, it's a good color code that Sky came up with that helps further identify what our characters can and should be doing.
And see, that's a fantastic concept right there, alone, because a lot of people would not realize that, for someone on the spectrum, I mean, I know there's a wide variety. I myself am connected to this world, so I do understand some of this, that a lot of, our children will be affected by those different types of colors in a way that the average might not be because they see it differently. So to see that portrayed in your comics and to see that portrayed in your heroes and your villains, I think it's a really good concept to kind of give everybody else in a generalized idea that colors alone can have a different type of meaning and emotional meaning, not so much verbal meaning.
Right. With autism, we have to look at multiple ways to communicate. With the identity of one person may be different. They may express their autism in a different way from someone else, even though they're both under the same umbrella of the clinical diagnosis. And when I talk about autism, I want to be inclusive of individuals who also self-identify with autism. Our books are geared for kids of many ages, and we want them to enjoy heroic stories with or without autism themselves.
Yes, it's not the main focus. That's what I did like. I was looking through it and reading through some of your comics, and I've been studying up on it. And that's the one thing that I do like is that it's not the main focus. It's not for the people to really just only all this. I love the fact that you have your characters, and each one has some form of a different type of display. You know, from your advocacy, I'm sorry, I forgot the name of that character. You know, but down to each one, I thought it's a fantastic idea. You know.
Thanks. I think one thing. Go ahead, Sky.
Oh, I'm sorry. I always find it rather interesting that in the storytelling process, everybody is sometimes painted with the same brush, even brush. That means don't talk down to them. Tell a good story and be very inclusive, which is what David, definitely emphasizes to the point that we don't try to talk about the obvious. You see a horse, you don't have to, go into explanation about it or so. But what I mean by that is that there are instances where we show and not tell, and then there are times when we tell and not show, because it still gives the imagination to the individuals. We don't want to spell out everything to them because we're dealing with what you call intelligent audience.
Yes.
And people who happen to be on the spectrum are very intelligent themselves. That's the reason why the artwork is so detailed, because they can, the general audience can take in all the artwork. They can see the little minutiae, the things that help make up the panel, the facial expressions, the colors, the shading, the darkness, the angles and stuff, which is very fascinating in telling a story to add more context. And I just hope that through my artwork, I can do David's words justice.
Oh,
I think it's a shared process.
Beautiful. It matches the storyline. Do match what you visually see, and that's one of the things that I really like is that even the visual alone, without the storyline, you can still see the storyline in there.
And I think that's what comic books should be. Good art telling a good story that people can appreciate and understand. Whether it's Spider-Man or Batman or any other common comic book hero, we tend to look for something in them from ourselves, how they handle a bully, how they handle a relationship, and using little nuances of facial features to show an angry expression, the speech bubble that tells, I'm angry, not something like, I'm upset, because the word upset can be kind of confusing. I could be sad upset or angry upset. Using clear-cut language, and then even the caption boxes to say, this character is angry. And we leave the reader to begin to pick up those patterns. We set up using the colors, using the expressions, and the story, the motivation from point A to point Z, that the readers can begin to pick up what's going on in the story and transfer, hopefully, some of that into real life. When somebody looks angry, can they relate to another person maybe in their classroom or at their job who might look like that too, and perhaps avoid that person or deal with them in a different way, now knowing and being able to predict how an angry person might respond?
Also, I take in consideration that David and myself work on underlying themes for each story. whether it's like anger, how to deal with anger, shock, how to deal with shock, and putting the people in situations that emphasize what they are feeling. Right down to even the villain happens to have a particular purpose, a particular direction, much less figuring out his motivation. But since we can concentrate on it, we can make it that much clearer for our readers, but allowing the nuances to sink in without being so blatantly obvious, without making it seem like we're talking down to our audience, which we are not.
Yeah, exactly. I do get that because, again, not everybody realizes, that, in our community, our community will see things slightly different, but they're very intelligent, and they will get all of that, and it's something that they can definitely connect to. So again, you didn't focus on, the comic book character or hero having autism so much as you focus on what they can do with it and what their ability is.
Yes.
And they're those people on top of that, just, with that extra different ability, they use it for the good. So I think that's something that is fantastic. We do need to have more of that in there because honestly, there's not very much of that. Recently in the movie, the Power Rangers were out. There was speculation of one of the characters being on the spectrum. But again, it's not something that was really focused or touched on or anything, as you said, to the point where even certain colors can mean a certain meaning or certain tones, and just like you said, facial recognition. Things like that are normally thought about or included in that type of stuff when the general movie is made, whether it's made as a superhero movie or not, So seeing something like this, I feel, is a gap that's missing in the industry. So I feel what you guys are doing are definitely, trying to close that gap and trying to create more. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm also fascinated by the fact why David chose the steampunk genre. Care to elaborate, David?
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Tell us about that. Because steampunk has a
There was some research. Yeah, there was some research done by the University of Massachusetts Lowell a few years back that showed that steampunk genre art, that Victorian era where steam-powered cogs and gears showed predictability in motion. A lot of the autistic students gravitated towards that style of art, again, because of the predictability. You can see, literally, cause and effect relationships. Also, by placing it in a Victorian era, we can avoid some modern-day social faux pas and kind of set up our own pre-built, pre-established culture that, for its successes and its flaws, the Victorian era is one to be romanticized for its chivalry, its do-gooding deeds, without the advances of superpowered technology and proper etiquette. And that's something even our characters sitting down to a meal harkens back to social expectations, those cultures, the idea of how to communicate without a smartphone or tablet device all the time. And that's some of the reason behind the steampunk genre. Also, one that mainstream comics really hasn't considered. So that allowed us to fill another niche.
Wow, and that's fascinating because I never would have put that concept together. I really wouldn't have. That's a really good, the fact that you're right, because the steampunk culture is, like you said, based in that era where everything is, you can see the connection to everything, making everything work. I never paid attention to that as far as in our communities, for gravitating towards that type of art. But I know the culture itself, we actually covered an event last year on the steampunk event. And the culture itself was fascinating, and it was during that everything does things to fit for our community to visually see that. I think that's fantastic. I never would have thought about that. And this was done at a university, as a university, you said?
Yeah, University of Massachusetts, Lowell.
Wow.
We contacted them when we found out about that research and told them what we were doing, and they were very supportive of it, and were also interested in the use of facial feature recognition, too. So we shared some information and support that way.
Very, very nice. Because, facial recognition, the typical average wouldn't stop to think about. That's not something easily caught in the spectrum community. So they definitely need a little bit different type of concept.
Sure. That harkens back to the idea that many students in an autistic support classroom are not traditionally mainstreamed, if not but for a few classes. So how might they recognize the expression or even social interactions of someone being angry or sad, how to interact and how to respond to it, let alone even more problematic expressions of contempt or disgust, or how to differentiate from fear from surprise. Those playground exchanges are rare and precious in a neurotypical experience, let alone in an exclusionary autistic support classroom from their neurotypical peers.
Exactly. So I think this is fantastic. I feel like you really are helping to bridge a gap that is definitely needed, because the gap is there. It's something I feel that our community needs to be able to have something out there for them to look up to and aspire to. Oh, wow, this is cool. I want to be able to do that. Just have that something out there available to them to give them that concept and to give them that feeling, that they too are included regardless of what is out there. They can do as well.
Oh, yeah. And speaking of inclusion, in the first volumes that we did of Case Value, David also added the elements for parents to understand too, much less the casual reader who knows very little about the autism spectrum. He goes into, in the first few books, we have exercises that parents can try with their children, and children can try with the parents, because adding the psychological studies and terminologies and stuff is very helpful. Even the main villain, Dr. Mobius, there's a history behind him. And David, would you care to elaborate?
Sure. When we talk about emotional regulation, trying to convey that in a comic book, Dr. Mobius, his name is built on a real-world disorder called Mobius syndrome, in which an individual is unable or unlikely able to visually express emotions on their face, which makes our villain a stone-cold, flat-faced villain. Nothing that you can say will make him look angry, nor make him look happy, and it kind of places him in that firm, cold, distant science alchemist, using the Victorian word, that his goals and objectives for success or failure come across very flat. And it makes, again, our hero who is trying to understand these social expressions, it creates a unique villain for him. Because when he does come into confrontation with his arch nemesis, there's no expressions to read. All of his success in other social situations are going to fail him. How can he counteract or understand a person who is not able to express visually their facial muscles showing happiness, sadness, fear, surprise? All of those things are absent in Mobius.
Wow.
And he's also wearing red.
Faces more of a dilemma than you would think.
Right. And Dr. Mobius wears red. So again, that kind of punctuates that you know that he's the bad guy. But two, you had mentioned earlier, Dilly, and I wanted to kind of call back to it. In the absence of an openly autistic social leader, there are no politicians who are openly autistic. I know I contacted, at the time, a couple of years ago, every United States senator, asking them, in the absence of an openly autistic representative, who advises you on autism? And just that question was very eye-opening Some gave some great resources. Others very flatly, open-mindedly said, well, I rely on basically my neighbor's cousin's nephew's baby's dog sitter.
Oh,
you know, and that was very eye-opening for that admonition. And, you know, with all the lobbyists and money behind major lobbyists, you know what I'm talking about for any particular group, who is really advising? There are very few prominent groups who are sending out positive messages. And even those groups are tainted politically on one side or this side. So I understand commercialism, I understand capitalism, but to have just some straight, honest answers about autism seems more difficult than actually dealing with some of the challenges.
Right? Yes.
With the comic book, I've been able to talk to more people. For me, it's a personal victory. I'm able to communicate with our fans. I'm able to interact with people literally from all over the globe who had heard about our comics, who've come to visit us and to talk about us. I think one of the most moving testimonies about us doing good work was a mother who sent a private video to us, and she allowed us to share the story, but no personal details. She showed the Facebook page to her son, who is nonverbal, and he looked at the picture of our hero, pointed to the screen, then at himself, and smiled. He got it. He didn't need words at that time.
Joyous feeling in her moment, seeing her child have that connection. He recognized.
Yeah. He saw what we were doing, and those kind of things, those kind of accolades. We've gotten some awards. We're actually in a museum for disability history and things of that nature. And the best thing about it is, again, being on the spectrum, being able to connect with people, being able to connect with our fans. Our families.
I find it so very rewarding, more than anything you could ever imagine, is when one of our readers come up and shows us their artwork, that we've inspired them to create their own world, their own heroes, to interact in the ways they never did before.
And that is such a big deal for our community. I can say I'm part of that community because I do live in that family life myself. My daughter is on the spectrum, and she's an artist. She is somebody who draws, and she communicates through her art. So I completely understand what our community, as far as what it means to them, because I showed her your site, and I'll be that parent to say that. I showed my daughter your site. I showed her all the art. We went through it, and she was very excited. It's something that you like to do, and I wanted you to show you that there are people that are doing this as well, and regardless of the diagnosis of whatever anybody has, if you have the passion to do something and you do your best to study and learn it, you can succeed in it. You know, so I myself found your site very inspiring, and I actually use it on a personal note with my child to show her you can succeed in this, because it's something she already likes to dabble and do and to express herself, because she doesn't always have the words to say what she wants to say. So I think what you're doing is extremely inspiring. I think a lot of the people in the community, once they know more about you, they will come and check out your site and hopefully also show their children, or if they themselves may happen to have anything that they feel may have hindered them at some point. This would be an inspiration to them that it doesn't matter. You can succeed as long as you just keep going, you know, and don't give up, regardless of what anything is. And this shows so much of that. You know, I use it as an inspiration personally for my family. And I just wanted to say thank you for everything that you guys do and for what you're succeeding in and what you're trying to kind of pave that way for others to see it. And when others see something like this and see that success, it visually gives them that hope, that feeling of, I could do this too, or I would love to do this too. Maybe I should try.
Yes.
And that is a good hope. We let's presume competence. We look for the people to bring bring out their best. And sometimes it starts with the first line stroke of a picture, or the first time sitting in front of a typewriter or keyboard to tell their story. And for us, it really kind of rings true personally. It was very overwhelming for me, some of the success we had, that I needed to take a break and step back from the comics for a while just to intellectually process it. But I hope a lesson some other people can learn, especially our fans, is the attempt is good, and it's okay to restart again. We've learned a lot from mainstream comic books on what not to do in some of their stories to avoid the identity politics for its own sake. So we wanted to come back and not have a hero who is just autistic, but to have a genuine hero who does good things who just happens to be autistic. For example, he wears on his belt on his battle suit, he has a first aid kit, and he uses it. And we wanted to be able to show those kind of things. That's a good thing. We could write a book. We could make a video about how important it is to learn first aid and do those things. But just seeing our hero on the page have a safety first aid kit and then use it, again, sometimes actions speak louder than words. And the sequential art and storytelling of comic books.
Right. You know, that's fantastic. I love that. I love that idea. Now, how long have you guys been doing this altogether?
I would say probably about 5 years now, Sky. Is that about right?
Yeah, something like that. I can't remember. But we've been at it and we've been enjoying it. It doesn't, time seems to fly and there's no, we just lost track of things because we're just having so much fun with putting all this together.
I think what also has helped.
Go ahead. It's a little hard when it's a three-way audio conversation.
Oh, sure. No, Angela, my wife, and Sky are my best friends. So when we talk about a story, we're able to talk usually after the kids are in bed and we have some downtime in the evenings. We can talk for hours about suit du jour, what's going on in the world, and then we start talking about our characters in the story, and we spend hours developing them and wordsmithing it out to have certain powers. For example, in a steampunk world, one of our characters struggles with depression. Words can hurt her, but we gave her a superpower that she's immune to cold steel. In a gear-driven metallic steampunk world, that's a good ability to have. Yeah. But it also underlines that she still struggles with depression. Insult may cut her deeper than any sword.
Oh, wow, yeah, but then you'll have so many people that can relate to that, and that's not somebody you see in the average comic book.
Well, there's also something else that David and I, and especially Angela, helped create, which is well before everybody else started doing it, or around, we kind of had the same starting point, a group of warriors called the Shimmer. And they, like I said, they're just a group of women that really aren't inspired by men. They're standalone warriors. They are very powerful in their own right. And David and Angela help make them a lot more solid, give them, origins and stories, and they're rather fantastic. David?
Yeah, we were kind of inspired by Mesoamerican art, but they're a group of warrior women who were curious about why the world didn't end. Remember all those post-apocalyptic heralds who were saying, the world's going to end at year 2000, or in 2012 the world's going to end. Yes. The Shimmer kind of represent that, and we're very curious on why the world hasn't ended. They were expecting that to happen and they kind of came out of hiding from the skies with gossamer wings and vibrant colors. And what's interesting is they don't speak verbally. They can communicate telepathically with someone they feel they can bond to, but they're warriors through and through. They respect each other. They respect the environment. They respect animals. And that's one of their credences that one of our characters adopts. That how she interacts with others, how she treats animals, how she cares for her pets and nature in general, and that she doesn't always have to talk to have a major influence.
Plus, the Shimmer also are, not only are the Shimmer warriors, but they're also chroniclers. They know what happened in the past. They have books of history, much less insight into the future.
Okay, so kind of like a piece of their time that knows that way, in fact.
Yeah, a spoiler for a story coming up. One of their journals falls into the hands of our heroes, and it's about the future. And they discover that it's blank with the simple instructions to write your own story, to write your own future. And we want to give kids that. We want to give them the ideals that they can become the heroes. Today's comic book reader might be tomorrow's congressional representative. Today's comic book fan might be a neurosurgeon. Today's just entertained kid might grow up to entertain their own kids. And that is as equally valuable on many levels as any professional career choice. Just being a good person, being compassionate, being able to understand your own emotions and those around you. I think society needs more of those kind of heroes than any other kind.
Yeah, especially nowadays, because nowadays there is always something going on somewhere, and there's just a lot of difficult things happening. There's a lot of different diagnoses, and there's a lot of different concepts that need to be changed because a lot of things are still looked at as hopeful, and even, like you said, even the way a comic book is written, there was none of these type of characters that you said you can find. There was no characters. There wasn't, you can't even find people in Congress that represent. So it's definitely a gap that needs to be bridged, and I'm very excited to know that I was able to come across all this because I was like, oh my gosh, this is something that you don't see every day. You have to actually study and look up stuff like this. You have to look through keywords and things like this just to find, certain sites that you can connect with. And I love the fact that you guys are doing something that's mainstream and that everybody can see what you're doing and everybody can get that inspiration.
Yes.
Kids need more heroes like themselves. And we're going to start the ball rolling. And hopefully it propels more people on the spectrum to tell their stories, whether by writing or by art, as well as people who aren't on the spectrum, to feel inspired by good heroes in a good story that they can emulate. It kind of removes that barrier of, I don't know how to become a professional comic book writer or a professional comic book artist. I don't know if I can ever work at DC or Marvel or any other big-name comic book place. You don't have to do that. You can start with your first comic. Sky and I take great pleasure in some other fans who have shared their comic books. It may only be, one example was 12 pages, but they did it all themselves. And they identified on the spectrum, and they published it, and we bought a copy, their parents bought a copy, and if that's all, whoever buys a copy, that kid felt proud. They felt they made a contribution that was important. Their voice was heard. It may not have been heard around the world, but someday someone will do something even better than we are and make even a bigger difference. And if we can be a
take someone to make that first step, though.
Yeah. That's what we're trying to do.
Well, I feel that you've definitely reached some of that for sure. And I know you also have other projects coming up as well. So I know that you are working with a few other things. Would you like to touch on those other projects coming up so that others know what you have coming up? And then when that comes out, we can help promote it as well.
Sure, Scott. You want to kick that off?
Okay, yes. An individual got in contact with David and myself and wanted to know if we can help them get something off the ground, a magazine that deals with children, basically special needs, but not quite focused primarily on that. It is a magazine called Outfox. You can locate it online at www.outfoxmagazine.com. We contributed some stories to them, a different kind of genre, something called Quantum X, which will soon be changed into something else. But it's about these kids, a group of children, teenagers or young tweens, set in a science fiction futuristic world where they're confronted with problems and how to deal with it on their own. And getting back to David's principle of show, not tell, we're leaving it up to the audience to determine if there's any social issues that these children must deal with, rather than making it so blatantly obvious that this one has this one has a problem of that, et cetera, et cetera. We're just telling a story and allowing their disabilities to show, but also giving them the chance to overcome it in a situation, because sometimes that's what people need. They become stronger when they need to be. And the magazine is run by Jackie Reed out of Canada, and we're having a lot of fun with that because it also gives us a large spectrum of stories to tell.
I'm also interested, Jackie's currently working on...
audience as well, if this is based in Canada, so that more will get to, know about your art and everything like that, so you can inspire more people.
Yeah, we're excited too that Jackie's working on a grant. We're still awaiting word back from that, where kids can write to us. We're going to be fictional scientists who have created a new kind of technology that allows kids to use one cool superpower for good. And they can describe however they want. And they can describe themselves however they want. And Sky and I would take those stories sent into to the editor and create a 1 or 2 page story based on that character, how they choose to identify, how they imagine they might look. I don't care if it's a boy or a girl. Or even if they choose to identify as a boy or girl, they could be a robot or an alien. But if they have a belief that they could do something good with one superpower, what would they choose to do? And then we're going to work on illustrating that story so more kids can literally see themselves be the hero, even just for a couple pages.
That's fantastic. You can't see my face right now, but I've got this one on my face right now. Fantastic concept. You will probably so many kids writing this. Now, is that a project that is going on the magazine side, or is that a separate one?
I think it's going to touch on both. I think we're waiting to hear back about the grant opportunity. But even still, if the grant is not initially successful, partnering with Jackie on that and teamwork with Sky again on a new project, I think we always find a way to do something good. It's important. There are always sacrifices to be made, and if people are there to help, that's great. But something our comic book adventures in real life has taught us is to not seek others' validation. We believe we're doing good. We've got great feedback from our fans. They appreciate us. So we'll put our nose back to the grindstone, and we take a break, we'll look up. If someone is there, that's great. And we go back to work. Then we look up. If there are more people, that's even better. And then we go back to work. And when we keep looking up, when we take our break, when we sharpen the proverbial saw, to use Stephen Covey's words, and take that break to revitalize and re-energize ourselves, we're not beholden to anyone's approval of us. We don't have deadlines set by ourselves. That's why we are, our own creators. And we don't have those artificial restrictions that you might normally face with a comic book or even something like the grant that we're working on with Jackie. The creativity, that freedom to genuinely be ourselves allows us to look at a problem differently than the average person, and find unique solutions using our own talents and skill sets to tackle those challenges.
Yeah, because sometimes
we look at it as well, because sometimes, it is hard to fulfill and do all of that, and then you stress out on whether or not it's going to succeed or whether or not it's going to do good, and you're going to get someone helping it, and that can weigh a person down. So it's really a nice concept to be able to, like you said, right? Be able to take that breath, keep going, and being able to walk with your site, that gives you that leeway, and that's fantastic. Something else that is a bonus for being able to do something like this.
Well, I also find it rather interesting and very advantageous that the three of us, the four of us, Jackie included, we're so streamlined that we're not hampered by committee and stuff. I'm sure you've heard the expression, a camel is a horse decided on by committee, meaning that so many people put so much input into, well, I think our horse should have tiny ears. I think he should have, he should have paws instead of hooves. And all these people throwing in these ideas, what they think a horse should be, it ends up looking like a camel instead. But with, the basics, we get straight to the point.
And for our community, sometimes that's what we need. That's what we need. Straight to the point. And let us see and just show us that easy concept to get there, and let us be able to go from there. I think we need a lot more of that. And
I think it's helpful too for people to. I've taken a fast from mainstream news a lot of the time. I still presume that we're on the precipice of economic collapse or war or social unrest. I imagine that's still the same today as it was 6 months ago when I stopped reading the news religiously. And I think that's been the same thing from all the time. We're always in the midst of crisis. And in the attempts to gain new readers, new viewers, new audiences, the sensationalization of that I found a detriment. So I'll very cautiously and timidly digest news from very vanilla sources, because I don't want it even more subtly or overtly tainted with any particular spin. But it allows us to kind of focus more on our stories, being good, doing good works, being honest, truthful, loyal, stopping those who would do the opposite of those things. That's what makes a hero. It did with Joseph Campbell's Man with 1,000 Faces. Those timeless stories, those heroes doing good, that's unchanging as well. And that's what we wanted to do with our comics.
Yes, and also David tends to want to be inclusive to others. Not all the heroes have to be adults. They can be children as well, too. And the fact that he sometimes things are pulled from actual situations that happen. So it has that real feel to it, but it's still fiction. So we're using it as metaphors and things of that nature that people can relate to, or put it on a level that they can understand. This is what happened when such and such got angry. Well, I remember seeing something like that or having that happen to me once. So, and that's how we become inclusive. From parents
to everybody. Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, I have a couple decades under my belt as a professional helper, and have gotten quite good at diagnostic criteria. And I try to weave those into our characters on how they might express anxiety and how they might express autism. It's just one expression. Your mileage may vary, and that's okay. But again, it's one story told with a sense of legitimacy and credibility that we don't typically see. Characters today, like I said, I don't watch much news, but I do read lots of comic books, and I'm sad to see that many of our heroes are angry, that they are, I can certainly understand being angry at social injustice or dangerous ideas, and rightfully so. But at the end of the day, don't be angry, be the hero. You can still triumph over those who would put you down without having to sink to their level.
And
Exactly.
not only,
Exactly.
it's also a question about, like, yeah, you can be angry, but what are you going to do about it?
Yes, you're going to
Yeah.
anger, and you don't really want that to end with your heroes. You want your heroes to be able to resolve something and feel better, not have so much of that.
Yeah. We want kids, thinking outside the box a little bit, we decided to brand our comics for developmental ages, teen and up. Let's face it, our main hero carries a sword, so we're not aiming at preschool kids here. But we wanted to add that designation for developmental ages, because there might be some people in their 20s who are developmentally 13.
Yeah.
On the flip side, there might be a really sharp 12-year-old, and developmentally they would be more mature to understand that just shouldn't go run around with swinging a sword, But we wanted to, could you imagine a world, Billy, where more marketers of manufacturers of toys and books would be more inclusive to put developmental age recommendations on their toys, on their books, on any products they may have. Universally, it's just assumed this is for ages 4 to 8. Well, I don't think all 4 to 8-year-olds are made the same, or would enjoy that. I think I collect as many toys in my 40s as the kids in our house do. It's an enjoyable thing for me, and I don't care about the ages. I enjoy playing with them and collecting them too, and I don't hurt anybody in the process, so I think it's okay.
I have a lot of superhero shirts. We have a lot of those things. What age you are, this is still stuff that will always attract people because you grow up in this concept. You grow up watching comic books or reading comic books. You grow up watching, hero movies. You grow up, there's always going to be the battle between good and evil no matter where you are in life. As you said before, it's an ongoing thing. So to have something like this thrown in the mix, I think, is a really good inspiration because it is inclusive to many more people. As the average citizen, they don't really realize sometimes when you make a movie, it's just geared to be for this particular movie, a scary movie or this movie or that movie. It's not really geared particularly for a certain type of audience all the time. And I think gearing this for the community just to show, to have an inclusiveness in it, I think is one of the things that we're missing in a lot of mainstream industry.
Yeah, when I was in elementary school, my grandfather passed away, and that was the first time I had to deal with death. And, lots of family members were coming over to Grandma's house, and I really didn't understand it. And during a break in a lot of the activity, Grandma took me to the corner market store and just, bought some bread or something, made an excuse to go out with me, just me. And there on the news rack was a Spider-Man comic book. I still have it. And she bought that for me, and in the evening when things got quiet, she read it with me, not to me, she read it with me. And she showed how that hero was overcoming the bad guy. And she said, that's what your grandpa used to do. He used to always be a champion of good. He always tried to find the good in other people and didn't like how other people would hurt other people. Your grandpa was a good guy. And I knew that. But the importance of that comic book and the lessons it's taught me is that those shared social stories can have an impact. If you thrust a book about how to cope with dying in my young hands at that age, I could have probably read some of it, and some of it would have gone over my head. but that personal connection, that 20 minutes or half hour. I remember the comic book so much more because my grandma read it with me and related it to something personal in my life. And that's what we're trying to do with the comics. Parents can read with their kids and make those social connections.
Yes.
And I think that is a very beautiful concept because we need that. We need that. And even parents need to be able to have something to help connect with their children, that whose children are, have a little bit more difficulty connecting in the social cues. We definitely need more opened up to us as well as parents. And again, this is something I feel that kind of helps put that in the parents' hands, a little bit of that perspective, because then they can see your whole concept of it is, like you said, facial recognition, adding in that advocacy robot, adding in the little things that make a huge difference for inclusion for the community on the spectrum, to where the average would not, because it's not something that they would even understand the concept themselves, because they probably would have never heard of that. So it's definitely adding something that I feel that we need, and it's absolutely wonderful. Is this something that you guys would like to make into a movie one day? Maybe have your characters built on the big screen?
That would be very flattering. I would love to be a part of something like that. That is something that I guess it would be kind of a dream. But I think right now, I think Sky and I are focused on the next issue and the issue after that. Again, it kind of harkens back. If that opportunity presents itself, we'll certainly definitely consider it a lot.
That would be fantastic.
But
on my question, I would like to see toys, and David came up with so many different ideas, so many revolutionary things that we can do with toys for people, for children, even for adults on the spectrum, because nothing is really geared that they feel is for them. Everybody wants something that's for them. They want to watch a TV show where they feel part of. They want to read a book that they're in, and represented and such. Toys are no different.
Yeah.
Imagine, Dilly, if a child on the spectrum had a small collectible action figure of the Zephyr, our main hero, and its cape could be custom ordered from a website, a manufacturer that might have a silk cape, so it would have that tactile sensitivity, or it might have like a Velcro feel to it, a little bumpy or rough, or that the bottom of his boots might be a little bit like sandpaper to have that kind of grit, or that if you squeeze his legs,
sensory-wise,
the light would show on his chest to illuminate and walk down the hall. And when they go over to their friend's house to play with their superhero toys, the person on the spectrum with the Zephyr action figure could go along and say, this is a hero too. It's manufactured, it's made, it looks cool, and it is cool. I'm cool because I'm playing with you. And again, ...
Yes, it blends the connection. Exactly. It blends that connection, and it blends that, hey, I have something, too, that I can look up to and pretend to be, and the thought of being able to customize little sensory items on them for your child, oh, my God, I love that idea. I truly love that idea, because that can make a huge difference. I mean, some of our kids walk around with toys that no matter where we're at, that toy is in their backpack, or something like that, because they identify with that toy, or they need it just for the comfort, the comfort of home or something like that, or something that they could put their focus in or pretend that they are that character. In our community, everybody's going to understand that right there.
Yeah, I think I like to refer to it as maturing the security blanket. They still might have that soft cloth, even silky, or however the security blanket that every kid, I think, kind of has at some point. And it still allows you, it just changes its form. It's now the cloth cape on a superhero, or its costume, and allows for individualization. You can customize it. And again, those reinforcing things of the color. My heroes, I like purple, so I want them to have a purple cape instead of a blue cape. Go for it. And just being able to do that now. Yeah, now slap that recommended for developmental ages onto the packaging. You have a niche market that nobody has yet tapped into.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. That is so true, and just being a family, knowing of the purchases of the different sensory things for our kids, you don't really have heroes at all and those types of characters at all. There is not really anything geared specifically for that. I think you just touched on a fantastic idea, because again, that would give a child a boost of confidence, especially a child who has to go to the hospital and be at the hospital overnight. That's more difficult for the community on the spectrum because you can't easily explain things to them, and they always have a character with them to give them that comfort. So if, we tell my child, you're a superhero, all the stuff you go through, you're a superhero. If she had a superhero that she felt was geared for her, something that she could hold on to and take, I know she would. So that boosts confidence for the kids too. If you walk into a group like you said, another child, this is what I have. Check out my superhero. Look what he could do. And it just that would also boost them to want to maybe be a little bit more included because they feel that they have something that's geared for them, just like that other kid had.
Yeah. Just like watching a kid play the Zephyr action figure against Darth Vader. That would be cool.
Right, and then Darth Vader losing. Just,
yeah. Well, too, with the steampunk genre, the whole chivalrous world, can't think of many heroes who have a sword as their main weapon. They may have a shield, or they may have other weapons, a big hammer or such like that, even a cool belt that has lots of gadgets. But nobody's really carrying around a sword, and certainly no featured main hero is the one using that.
Exactly. Well, I think everything that you guys are doing are fantastic. I think you're really paving the way in a lot of different areas because, again, I have not seen much of this in the industry, and just being both in the industry and in the ASD world, I don't see it in the ASD world either. I don't see this type of stuff. I can't just go to a store and buy my child something that this is something you're going to relate to easily, and it's not out there. So to put more things out there, I think a lot it's going to boom. I think it'll boom especially when you get those toys out there. Now, is this something that you're working on in the near future? Is this a concept still right now, or do you have productions already going for your sensory toys?
We talked about the sensory toys with a couple of different groups, and it's something we can revisit. Again, being a small group, we don't have the purchasing power of a Mattel or Hasbro, or certainly not even Disney to do these. These our comics are self-funded. We've had some people who've believed in us and have given us some great deals on printing and advertising throughout, but by and large, it's us. It's the three of us, my wife Angie, Sky, and myself, and those dollars we make stretch as much as we can. So talking about toys, we would certainly need some help with that, but we have lots of ideas like that. Building an entire world for kids to feel more included, and we just talked just casually in this interview about some of those ideas. Sit down and talk to us with purpose on it. We get a lot deeper.
Exactly, and you never know. You start out small. Nobody ever starts out big. That just doesn't happen. Even when Disney started small. No matter where you are, everybody starts out small. So hopefully this also kind of helps get some more promotion out there, some more people knowing about your site, and honestly, you never know who's going to hear this interview and say, hey, I work for Mattel, or I work for this toy company, or, I have the means and I love your idea. So you never know. And you start and just keep on going and just getting your concept out there little by little, growing everything, I think that would be a fantastic idea, and I think you could succeed in that too, and I would love to be able to help promote that. So if you ever get that going and you get some of those things going, just let us know, and we can help promote that as well for you.
That would be great. I really appreciate being able to talk with you. You know, I don't get to talk with many people so often, at least personally like this. I found you to be very calm, very passionate about your advocacy and about your writing craft, and I hope more people would be willing to check us out. Probably the easiest way to find us would be on Facebook. We even have a Shop Now button on the banner, so you can order the comics directly from us on Facebook or from indieplanet.com, INDY planet.com. Just look for Face Value Comics. One thing, my wife Angie worked on something in anticipation of the interview. If your audience would, when they go to buy the comic book, if they enter in the coupon code Face Value, just like take me at face value, they can get 10% off the order. So that's something additional we can offer for your readers.
Oh, very, very nice, very nice. Well, you know, for all of the press readers out there and all the listeners out there who will be listening to this interview, please make sure you check out Face Value Comics. They have a lot to offer, not just the autism community, but everybody, because the concepts are really cool. The storylines are really cool. Nothing is geared specifically to say, hey, this is a disability, or hey, I have something, or, you know, I don't see it as a disability myself. I see it as a different ability myself. You know, but they have something out there that's really great. It's new. It's just slightly different than your average mainstream, and it's something that needs to be out there, I believe. So please, if you are listening to this, check them out. Go to the sites that they said, that Dave mentioned, so that you can order something yourself, perhaps for a loved one, or just to check them out, give them support. And if there's anybody out there who would like to turn their Facebook, you know, their comics into a movie, give them a call and let them know.
Thanks so much, Dilly.